Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. The Prime Minister comes calling. Boris Johnson, he just visited the Swaminarayan temple at Neasden, England. And our friend, our guest from United Kingdom, across the pond, like we like to say, Pandit Satish Kumar Sharma was also there. Panditji, welcome to PGurus channel and take it away.
It's a pleasure as always, and you're absolutely right. The whole Twitter sphere has suddenly woken up, and the news is out there that the Prime Minister of Britain visited a Hindu mandir. Calling it a Hindu mandir is probably doing it a disservice. It's one of the largest outside of India. I think probably the largest in Europe, the Swaminarayan Mandir in Neasden.
I think so. I think so. I mean, Akshardham, those are all magnificent temples.
Yes, and it was quite an interesting visit. As you know, the visits of prime ministers, they tend to be quite difficult to predict, and often, especially in the last few days before an election, these things can be sprung upon a person. I don't know whether you were aware of it, but in the couple of days prior to the election, David Cameron also felt that he wanted to visit the mandir. He'd liked the atmosphere. And I think the blessings of thousands of people and good wishes always gives people a very, very significant lift and a burst of energy. So yes, this afternoon there was a call that a special guest may be visiting the Swaminarayan Sansthan Mandir. And so I was invited and I popped over, and as you can see, I've just literally returned from there. And it was a wonderful event. The Swaminarayan Sanstha is known for its hospitality and its warmth and its affection. And I've always enjoyed a wonderful, wonderful relationship with them. They're absolutely wonderful people. And so we were all sitting there, chatting, waiting for this special guest to arrive. And Boris Johnson arrived, the Prime Minister. But also one of the big buzz features, shall we say, was that his partner, Carrie, also arrived. Draped in the most glorious sari and looking totally at home and totally comfortable, with the entourage of other ladies all dressed in beautiful saris. So it was a very magical experience right from the word go.
Well, if an Indian head of state comes visiting to a temple, they usually are greeted with what is called as Purna Kumbha. There's a vessel kumbh, and with that, the head of the state is accorded a welcome by temple. How did it play out in the case of Boris Johnson? Did he have like an abhishek performed, or?
He did. It was a wonderful, genuine, authentic experience. Sometimes these things can be overly crafted, and you get the sense that it's not authentic, and the person's heart isn't in there.
Right.
Maybe it's for political purposes. He's not a stranger to the temple. He's been there on a number of occasions before when he was Lord Mayor as well. But it was wonderful that the Prime Minister, in these last few days when time is of such a premium, felt that he'd like to visit the mandir and get their blessings. It was very, very pleasant. He did a fairly lengthy speech, and Swami Yog Vivekji, who is the head of the Sanstha here in the UK, he delivered a very warm welcome and conveyed his blessings. One thing which was very noticeable, and I think most people probably noticed it, he also conveyed the blessings from Mahant Swamiji, who is the head of the International Swaminarayan Sanstha, the BAPS Sanstha. And this is probably one of the largest international Hindu organizations. And for Mahant Swamiji to actually ask Yog Vivekji to convey his blessings for good health, prosperity, success, and victory was a noticeable remark that he made. And there was a distinct buzz in the audience that, this is a very powerful blessing from the head of a very, very prominent and very well-established sanstha. It was quite remarkable.
And I think, I've heard, mentions being made that the overseas Indians, whichever country they are, they tend to vote for the winning side. How do you see Boris Johnson's chances?
Well, as you know, Prime Minister Johnson is a very adept and skillful orator, being trained at the Oxford Union in debating. He's a masterful speech maker, and his speech didn't disappoint. He made a number of quips. He shared one of those stories of his visit with Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, who joked with him and mentioned to him that the Indians are always on the winning side, which, as you can imagine, when he
Right.
shared that with 3,000 Indians in a hall, that went down very well indeed. There were a number of other points that Boris Johnson made in his speech which really resonated. I noticed that 2 points drew a very, very strong response from the audience. The first point was that he mentioned specifically that this is the first time in a manifesto for one of the parties in England, we have specifically mentioned our intentions and hopes with regard to India, and India is named in our manifesto. So we are very much committed to this relationship, and we see great things. He mentioned that Prime Minister Modi ji had described to him that there was a living bridge, that the diaspora was a living bridge between India and Britain, and that that living bridge should be strengthened and lots more traffic passed over that bridge in all spheres. And that went down really well. But one thing I noted went down particularly well was when he mentioned that his government would stand side by side with India against the forces of terrorism. And I think, having very recently seen the horrors that were played out on London Bridge, that aspect is very much in everyone's mind. And so for him to mention that, and also to connect it with India and the problems that India's been having with its belligerent partner, that resonated very well, and it drew a very, very significant round of applause. Very much appreciated.
That's awesome. And as we come down to the wire here, as the polling date comes, viewers, please do prepare, make arrangements for the, the elderly who can't perhaps go on their own, but they need some kind of transportation. Please make the arrangements. I think the British Indians do not exactly have a stellar record in terms of turnout. So we really would like to see you there and show your support. And hopefully this time it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, we are actually noticing quite a groundswell of activity. As you know, the Mahabharata was only fought when there was nowhere else to go. It was the last throes of existence for the Pandavas. And
Right.
this seems to be something that we've inherited, that we leave it until it's absolutely necessary. Well, okay, and then we'll get involved. But what we have seen is it's almost like a tsunami of unofficial support. Now, with most political parties, what happens is that they have formal support mechanisms, they have campaigns, they have posters, everything's costed, budgeted, etc., etc.
Right.
But as I've been traveling up and down the country and meeting with people and speaking on other dharmic issues, I've also been monitoring the conversations that people are having on this, and I have never seen such a groundswell of activity and engagement. Everybody is wanting to do something. So we're very, very hopeful that this time the level of engagement, the number of people going out to vote from our community will be very significant. I think it will be the informal campaigning activity which is going on through the Mussy network and the men's groups and everything else and the WhatsApp. I think that's going to be a lot larger than anybody has ever expected. So fingers crossed. We hope everybody keeps it up and running until the Thursday. There's not long to go now. It's only a matter of days.
Yes.
And yeah, I think it's going to be a surprise. I think we will see a prominent blip contributed by our community to this particular election campaign.
Before we sign off, Satishji, I remember the last time Britain went to polls, it was David Cameron who was contesting on part of the Conservative ticket. And I remember Dr. Swamy, sending a tweet supporting his candidacy, saying that the British Indians should consider voting for the Conservatives. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think Dr. Swamy might do it again this time? Or?
Who knows? I recall, though, Dr. Swamy had actually been with us here in the UK. We just launched our Dharma Rising series of conferences, which are now pretty much a global phenomenon. They've been happening all over the place. And Dr. Swamy was one of our inaugural guests who helped us launch it. And when he returned to India, he did, you're absolutely right. If I recall, he tweeted that he felt that the Conservatives had their finger on the pulse of the British Indian community, and I think he'd be actually right to say that that pulse has been that connection has maintained itself, and we will see. I think we will see that. Who knows? We'll look forward to hearing Dr. Swamy's opinion about it. There were a couple of other things that I noticed in the talk today. Boris Johnson mentioned how much the British Indian and the British Hindu community were appreciated. He referred to them as being part of the backbone of the National Health Service and contributing in so many other spaces, which was wonderful. He expressed regret at the manner in which the anti-India, anti-Hindu rhetoric had been politically leveraged by persons who were not going to be named tonight on such an auspicious occasion. But we all got a feeling for who was being referred to. But it wasn't the audience, the gathering, which was over 3,000 people, standing room only, shall we say. They certainly appreciated that, and they definitely felt the contrast between some of the rhetoric that has been coming distinctly anti-India, anti-Hindu, as opposed to a delivery and a conversation at an event which was so upbeat. You know what it's like when 3,500 people gather in a hall and they're very happy and the speakers delivered a really good speech. There was such a positive atmosphere in there. I'd be very surprised if the Prime Minister and his gathering, Priti Patel, who's the Home Secretary, she was also there, if they weren't uplifted by the blessings and the energy and the support of so many people in such a warm and affectionate manner. It was an excellent event all around.
And I would like to add to what you observed about the service of the British Indians to the National Health Service in UK. There was a survey done in the United States as to which which origin doctor was the best in terms of treatment and patient care, and the Indian Americans were voted among the highest ones. I mean, this was across the board of the United States, a very big country, and they said that the Indian American doctors provided the best. I would say it's like a holistic thing. I mean, it's not just giving medication, but also words of advice and encouragement, and the way they took care of the patient. They scored very high marks. So wherever we are,
that is becoming recognized. And I think it's something to do with the fact that we're the beneficiaries of a cultural refinement program spanning thousands of years,
right?
And that we have this much longer time frame that we work to, measured in yugas, as
right.
opposed to just a small era or anything like that. But it was the atmosphere was absolutely wonderful. It was very warm, very affectionate, and I think we're all mature enough. The audience is mature enough to have spotted any sense of hypocrisy or politicking or something that wasn't quite genuine.
Right.
And I think many of us were watching out for the politician to emerge. But we were actually relieved, and it was quite delightful that it was like a genuine family event, and totally upbeat, very positive right the way through, refreshingly so, considering how some of the rest of the campaign has been conducted. So yes, it was wonderful to be part of it, and let's see whether the blessings of the saints and sadhus and santos of the Swaminarayan Sanstha keep up their track record of picking winners.
Yes, indeed, and we will be watching with great interest. Thank you very much, Pandit Satish Kumar Sharma-ji.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to doing perhaps squeezing in one more timely broadcast before the final day.
Oh yes, we will. We will.
Thank you very much, and
thank you.
Namaskar. Pranam.
Namaskar. Bye.
Pranam.